So I'm going next, and I'm going to be giving us a quick update on weedy rice in California. So quick reminder about what makes weedy rice a little bit different than our domesticated rice varieties. So if everyone recalls, weedy rice is the same species as our rice varieties, Oryza sativa. What makes weedy rice different is that instead of staying on the panicle until harvest, the seeds will shatter onto the soil surface, making it so that we can't collect them in our combine. The other issue is that weedy rice has dormancy, a lot like a weed, right? So if you had a bunch of weedy rice seed in your seed stock and you planted it in the ground, only a small portion of it would actually germinate, maybe 5 to 10%. So again, not good things, not things that we want in our seed. Weedy rice also has red pericarp or red bran, as you can see here on the left side of the screen. The red bran is quite a bit different, right, than our cultivars. Our cultivars have white or brown bran color. And the reason this matters is for milling. So if you had a lot of red rice or weedy red rice in your seed at the end of the season, if it was being milled for white rice, it's going to require extra milling. And a lot of the weedy rice tends to break at a much higher rate than our varieties. Brown rice, it would have to be optically sorted out. And then the next important thing is that weedy rice affects our yields. So obviously if it's shattering heavily onto the soil, it's not going into the combine and reducing the amount of rice that you're actually harvesting. And then we've done some research in the greenhouse in terms of actual competitiveness of weedy rice. So if it's a heavily infested field at about 40 plants per meter squared, you can see yield reductions of up to 70%. And that's quite a large reduction in yield, equivalent to maybe a heavy watergrass infestation. At 8 plants per meter squared, which is kind of where most of our fields are in California, that's about 42% of yield reduction. So it's still pretty significant. And the reason for this is that weedy rice is very competitive. It tillers a lot. It grows really fast at the beginning of the season. And so it's out competing our rice varieties. And then the last thing that again makes it so important to control weedy rice is that we don't have herbicides available currently. Kasim mentioned oxyfluorophane earlier. That might be an option, but it's not a current option. So we have Suppress as a spot spray, but there are no selective herbicides. And I'll go over or talk a little bit more about Suppress later on. So that really means that it requires cultural management, either hand roguing, pulling it out of the field, or using other cultural controls, such as seeds or certified seed. We can also do things like not tilling in the fall, and a couple of other cultural practices. But these are expensive, time consuming for the most part, and not really great options at the moment, but the best options that we have. We have 13,000 acres of weedy rice that have been found infested since 2016. The types are all shown here. These have all been identified phenotypically. So we've got characteristics for people to use to assist in spotting them in the field. The characteristics are all available on californiaweedyrice.com. So I'm not going to go over them today. I'm going to briefly touch on some of the samples that have been submitted in the past couple of years. So in 2020, we had quite a few new sites found. Most of the sites have type 1. We had some growers that have had weedy rice in the past, say they had type 1, and then we found an additional type on the same branch. So we had 3 growers in that situation in 2020. We also have some questionable types that we're currently investigating in the greenhouse. Earlier, I mentioned that most of our weedy rice, or all of it up to this point, is red pericarped, but we have some suspicious types that might be white pericarped. And so we're currently investigating for confirmation, and we'll know more in the fall. We had several concerns from Timothy Blank with CCIA regarding seed fields, and I have a slide with a little bit more detail on that in a moment. in 2021, we again got a lot of calls. So want to say thank you to everyone for continuing to submit samples to us. Most of them were off types or varietal contaminants. So we're going to remind people again, make sure you're cleaning out in between your seeding practices, your harvesting practices. Planes need to make sure that they're cleaning out. If you see something like koshikari, for example, and a medium grain field, it looks a lot like weedy rice, and it makes it harder for us to spot. So continue to clean out your equipment. And again, thanks to everyone for submitting those suspicious samples. We also had some findings, not too many. We had one previously infested ranch in Yuba County with another type found there. We had some new ranches in Glynn County, and then we have 2 currently unknown locations in terms of like actual field location, but we're following up with the seed company on that. We're going to be doing re-inspections every year. So the fields that we found in 2021, we'll be going back this season to make sure that we've got basin level data as well as infestation level data. As I mentioned before, Timothy Blank had some concerns regarding seed fields. And basically, in general, detections of red rice are much higher in our quality assurance program. Remember, we have the certified seed program and then the quality assurance program. So the quality assurance program is for a lot of our specialty varieties. Types 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, so basically everything except for type 3 and type 4 were found in our seed fields in 2021. All of those are rejected. So if there's one weedy rice plant in an entire 200-acre check, that entire check or field is rejected and can't be used for seed. It can still be eaten, can go into the regular rice pipeline, but it can't be used for seed. 3 out of those occurrences were suspected to originate from a seed source, 1 koshikari and 1 A201 lot. To summarize the differences here between the certified and quality assurance programs, we had 27,000 acres inspected for seed in the certified seed program, and only 670 were rejected. So pretty low rate of rejection, 2.5%. The quality assurance program, 1,000 acres inspected, and about 24% of those were rejected. So a much higher number or percentage of the acreage being rejected from the quality assurance program. I'm going to cover our weedy rice survey that we did in 2020. This was an acreage update. The purpose of this was to track spread to surrounding fields. So we wanted to see how people have been doing on our sanitation. So basically, are they taking weedy rice from currently infested fields and moving it to other fields on their ranch? So we inspected all fields surrounding a weedy rice infested field. We were also looking at our cultural practices and their effectiveness, roguing especially, and certified seed. We surveyed most of the acreage that we found since 2016. That was approximately 11,000 acres out of the 13,000 acres. So we had a couple of fields we weren't able to get to in 2020, but we went back in 2021. Like I said, we surveyed all the fields around those infested fields, and then this was something new that we hadn't done before, and we applied this infestation rating scale. So we had a scale from 0 to 6. I'll give some examples here. So 1 would have been less than 10 individual plants, and then we had all the way up to 6, level 6, which was more than 25% of the basin infested. So again, trying to get a better idea of really what the amount of weedy rices that we have in the infested basins. Before, if we had a field that had 1 plant in it, the entire field was classified as being infested. So even if it was 1 plant just found in 1 basin, that whole acreage was included. So to take a look at what that looks like, this is an example field here on the bottom of the screen. And you can see we did a infestation level rating for each individual check. So each individual basin got its own rating scale, and then we'll be tracking these over time to see how it's moving and if it's going up or down. We surveyed just about 11,000 acres Like I said before, we weren't able to get some of the fields in San Joaquin and Sacramento in 2020, but we went back last year, and that acreage will be updated this year. We surveyed or found infested about 20% of that acreage, so an 80% reduction, and I'll talk about why that is in a moment. In terms of biotypes, the acreage infested is still biotype 1 is the most widespread. It looks a lot like our medium grain varieties, so it's pretty hard to spot. It's a straw hold, no awns, and again, that's about 50%, a little over 50% of the acreage. Type 2 also remains very widespread at 30% of the acreage, and then type 3, significant, but it's pretty much remained where we found it. It hasn't spread a whole lot. So the counties where we found it originally is kind of where it's been contained. So the growers are doing a good job of not letting that spread. Type 4 is only in one field, and type 6 is only in one field. We didn't find any type 7. And then type 5, we had very significant acreage of type 5 previously. Type 5 has very low dormancy, and we believe that we got rid of most of this just from the use of certified seed. So this really shows, we're all supposed to be planting certified seed, but this shows the effectiveness of it. So just by switching to certified seed, we got rid of most of the fields, what we could find was 0 of the fields infested with type 5 still. So very good results, and very good, or I guess showing the effectiveness of certified seed. In terms of infestation level, most of our fields that had weedy rice were at one of the lower levels, so 1, 2, or 3. That's like patchy or single plants throughout a field. We had 0 with infestation level 6 in 2020. Last year we did have a couple that we added, so we've got some acreage now that's in this category 6. But again, most of the fields are down in this 1, 2, or 3 level, so very low numbers of plants. So some positive things that came out of this, that the overall infested area stayed constant for the past 2 to 3 years. So we're still at about 13,000 acres. We haven't seen a large jump. Our fields that were infested with type 5 seem to be clean, and we think this is from the switch to certified seed. So very positive thing. Another really great thing is that we don't seem to have any spread to surrounding fields. So we didn't find any infestations that had spread out of the basins or fields that we found them in originally. Like I said, we had a 80% reduction on average in terms of infested basins. And we think this could be both to the, or attributed to the better serving techniques, as well as some of the eradication efforts. And so we think everyone's doing a great job, and we just want to continue in this direction. The survey is going to be conducted again in 2025 on all of the acreage, but we're going to continue to do yearly updates with the previous year's samples. Real quickly, I'll touch on our spot spray herbicide. So we do have a spot spray herbicide now, Suppress. It's a biological, it's caprylic acid, and it's non-selective. It is registered for use in both organic and conventional fields. Quickly going through kind of what we've seen. So in 2019, we did a preliminary test a little bit late in the season. And some of the panicles, or some of the plants still produce panicles after the spray. So this was perhaps a little bit too late. We don't want to see plants putting out panicles after we spray. 2020, we went a little bit earlier. And so this is the timing that we're going to be recommending now. This was pretty much after all the grass herbicides had been applied, right when you can start to see the weedy rice kind of poking up above the canopy. And I went back and checked these plants at the end of the season, and none of them had produced a panicle. Again, this is a non-selective herbicide, but we wanted to just have the data. So we tested it in the greenhouse on all the biotypes, all the widely spread biotypes, and it kills all of them. So 100% control there. Some caveats here about how to use it. So if you're going to use weedy or Suppress for weedy rice spot spraying, you need to drain your field. The label doesn't allow for application with standing water. Application timing is kind of like I mentioned, it's roughly when we've told you to start scouting for weedy rice. So after that last grass herbicide was applied, before the weedy rice has started to flower. So again, you don't want it to start to flower, or you might get some panicles, heading, and some viable seed. Reflooding is recommended within 48 hours of application, and that's really for reduction of additional weed germination, not really for efficacy purposes. And then the last thing is, please follow the label rate. Don't go off the label. The maximum current rate is 9% solution in 100 gallons of water. And we're not looking like we're going to be accommodating higher rates on the label. So please just use that highest label rate. Okay, and some thank yous here.